Today I'm going to talk about quoting and citing, just to clear up a couple of things. So I will be referring to my college English workbook and reader with a theme on disability. The one here to my right is the newest edition. You may very well have the older edition. Don't worry, they're pretty much exactly the same thing. Just a couple of little updates were made. So that's what we'll be referring to when it comes to the works inside that I'll be talking about quoting. Okay, so in MLA primarily what you must have when you are quoting is the author, the title of the piece, and the page number. That's because typically whenever we quote someone, we have to have a work cited at the end of the paper. Now, at the beginning pages of the workbook, you are not writing works cited pages yet. So don't concern yourselves with that. We're only practicing in the first few pages of the College English Workbook how to incorporate quotes into our written discussions. So my first example here comes from the workbook in the very beginning, where we have an excerpt from Sarah Bradford's Some Scenes in the Life of Harriet Tubman. What you want to have, clearly, like I say, is the author, like that. So here we have the actual author of the piece. Now remember, I authored the workbook itself, but that doesn't mean that I wrote Some Scenes in the Life of Harriet Tubman. So you must actually include the author. Now this first example I'm showing you here is how to quote and cite the piece should you have had the actual text itself, Some Scenes in the Life of Harriet Tubman. So let's just start there. Here you have your author, Sarah Bradford, and she wrote a book, Some Scenes in the Life of Harriet Tubman. You will notice that the title here is italicized because we italicize book titles. When it comes to short stories or essays you might be quoting, then you're going to quote the title instead. Essays are quoted, books are italicized. Okay, so far we've got the author, we've got the title, and then before you quote, you want to summarize in your own words what the quote is about to say. And what that does is that tells your reader why you're even incorporating the quotation. So here I've written, Tubman's faith is revealed as playing a role in her bravery. Now that's my interpretation. You may not feel the same way about this quotation, but that's beside the point right now. So then I can either put a colon before the quote, or I can put a period and say something, for example, she writes, comma, and then introduce the quotation. Here's my quote. She had her duty to perform, and she expected to be taken care of till she was done. Now notice that this is called the parenthetical citation. That's because it has the page number in parentheses. That's why we call it parenthetical citation. So what you do is when the quote ends, you close the quote like this. Then you must have a space between the quote and the citation, and then you close with the period after the citation, not inside the quotes when you have a parenthetical citation. So let's say, for example, you were talking about a piece that's an essay. So if I'm writing about Harlan Coben's undercover parent, then I put the punctuation inside the quotes, because there is no citation necessary. That is just a title that needs to be quoted because it's an essay title. He explains his views. Oops. On spyware. La la la. You see? So that's how that part works. You want to have your quote. You want to have your author, your title, your brief explanation of the quote. Quote exactly what you're quoting. You do always need to quote the actual text, so don't just write paragraphs that have no quotations in them, because the reader needs the original quote. And then you have the parenthetical citation. Now again, I'm giving this example as though you had the actual text, the whole Some Scenes in the Life, but you guys using the College English Workbook and Reader don't have the original book. You have my workbook, so you would not cite page 42 in Bradford's original piece. What you would write is the author, the last name of the author, where you found the quotation, right? Whatever book you have, which in this case is Weather Up because it's the English workbook, and then the page from the workbook itself where you found the quote. That way, when your reader goes to the end, when you have a works cited page, they can see, oh, okay, Weather Up wrote this workbook. This is on page 7 where I am going to find this quote. Okay, so there's that part. Let's see. Also, now when it comes to quoting a quote, you'll want to, let me show you how to do that. So here you'll see I've written a paragraph, again, about some scenes in the life of Harriet Tubman. When it came to escaping the North, Tubman prided herself on being smarter than her potential captors, who searched for her and her quote-unquote fugitives. Now I took this word directly from the piece. Any word that you take directly from the piece must be quoted. That's why I quoted it there. I did not put a citation here because I'm going to continue quoting in this paragraph and they come from the same page. So it says, her and her fugitives during the day instead of at night when they traveled. Now here's the quote, and you'll see that because it's a quote of a quote, I had to put the internal quotations as single quotes. You see? So I'm quoting a quotation. So here I open my quotes, then I single quote, oops, Control C, then I single quote what was inside, and then how we laughed. And this is still the whole quotation, but I close the internal quote. Said she, period. We reopen the internal quote. We close the internal and the double quote. We cite, put the period at the end, and then here you can see I wrote discuss quote because you must never leave a quotation hanging in your paragraphs. Always discuss the quotation, why it matters to what you're saying, how it pertains to your argument. Okay, so never begin a paragraph with a quotation and never end a paragraph with a quotation. Always introduce the quotation first, summarize it in your own words, then quote it, cite it, and then discuss it. One issue you may come up against is that a PDF or a piece that has no page numbers, you might think, well, how am I going to cite that? It's simple. In your citation, you put N period space page period, close the citation, and of course put the period at the end. So hopefully this helps clear up just a couple of things in quoting, making sure you always include the author, the title, and that you've punctuated it well and that it's perfectly cited.